Hey gang, welcome back. This is the 30 Days to Real Estate series, and we are now moving into almost making offers. More importantly, we've got to tour the properties to signify which properties meet our criteria. My name is Joe Bell. I've been a real estate investor now for about 5 or 6 years and been in the real estate game for 14 years on the sales side. So seen a lot of properties, seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of the industry, and held every role within it. Now here today, we typically have about 1.5 to 2 million in investments wrapped up in properties at any given time. Currently, we have 3 properties on the market, and that should generate roughly around 250,000 gross. Realistically, probably taking home closer to about about 130 in net. So that's off of 3 properties that we have. It's not a huge number. It's not like, oh, I'm making millions and billions and quadrillions. Yet it works very well for the lifestyle that we want to lead. And that's the reason that real estate investing has become such a passion for me, and teaching it to others and bringing knowledge into the industry, and those folks specifically wanting to pursue this side of the world, because it can set you up for an amazing lifestyle in that case. So this is called a map that we're going through, and all of this information that we're covering is available for download. We're charging $9 for the map, so very minute investment to get all the information, which covers the spreadsheets, the insights, the tips, tricks, strategies, everything that goes into, getting prepared for your real estate investment career. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. We talked about analyzing properties last time, looking at 3 different properties, figuring out what the margins look like, the budgets, just kind of getting an overview of what that spreadsheet and that breakdown covers. So today we're talking about touring the properties. So we're taking those same three properties. We're going to go walk through them. Now, one of the best approaches for this part of the process, if you can have your contractor go through the property with you, and I made a little note here, basically have them evaluate costs as they go through it. So if you say, hey, we need a new kitchen, what are cabinets going to be? What are countertops going to be? How about flooring? What about sink, appliance package, all that fun stuff. Wrap it up. There's your kitchen costs. Going through the bathrooms. All right, we're going to need, 2 public bathrooms flipped and a master bath. So 2 publics are going to be 4,000 to 5,000, and the master is going to be 6,000 to 7,000, right? And you just are grabbing big chunks of numbers as you're walking through, so that you have a nice gut guesstimate. And then you'll transfer it over onto the spreadsheet that we covered in the last video and break it down even further, so that you start to be able to hone in on which properties are ideal for investment and which properties are dogs, and you make a pass, right? So bringing your contractor along can really help out this process. And the contractor is going to have a different approach to how they evaluate properties as well, because they can see behind the aesthetics. They can go, well, if we're going to do that, we're going to have to move plumbing, which means we're also going to have to, look at the electric costs. And once you start kind of moving things around, that's where the contractor being there for the walkthrough really will help, because they can then look into, the labor plus the materials and give you, again, we're just going for a gut guesstimate. We'll hone in, we'll dive in more specific once we go back to the spreadsheet and start budgeting out these properties. Again, you need to go into each property that you're going to tour with an ARV in mind. So again, ARV, after repair value, what you think you can sell the property for, right? And that's a matter of doing your research, whether you're utilizing a real estate professional, or if you've seen enough properties, know the street, know the area well enough to really dive into what that number looks like. I'm super conservative when I go into evaluating the ARV. I mean, I need some pretty solid evidence in order to guesstimate what that number is going to look like. And what's nice about that approach is, typically when we get all said and done with our project, I'm usually pricing our properties about 10 to 20,000 higher than what I thought it was going to sell for. Because again, very conservative. I don't like to get too crazy and optimistic. That will ruin a project real quick. So when looking at ARV, don't be afraid to be a little bit conservative. Hey, if something shifts or if things change, what is that bottom line number? I really have confidence and security that we can get. Going into considering making an offer, again, 60% is like an ideal, 60% of ARV is an ideal range because it sets you up with such a large margin. Now, 60% is few and far between unless you're really good at discovering deals. And I'm going to save that for another time. But 60 to 65%, right in that range, is fairly achievable based on the market that you're in, given what sort of upside you can create and what value you can build into the property. But just as a rule of thumb, 60 to 65% of ARV is where we traditionally will make our offers. So then we move over to the profit margins. And what sort of profit margin is typical? So if you were to just take a step back from the market and say, hey, what's a typical cap rate, capitalization rate, the rate at which you can make your money back? You're going to find in big metropolitan areas, probably 4 to 6% on the high side. In some of the more niche markets, you're probably in the 8 to 9% range. And so we want to be able to make that and more when we're looking at these projects because we're taking on a risk. It's a short time frame. There's a lot of moving parts. There's cash. Sometimes there's hard money at stake. There's percentages that need to be paid back on. So when we look at our profit margins, for us, we want to typically fall in the 12 to 17% range. Obviously, the higher the better. And looking at 30,000 to 40,000 in profits on those projects is really our target zone. Now, you're going to have your own set of criteria based on the market that you're in, but realistically, if you can hold the line around 15%, it's a pretty good return because realistically, if you can exchange that property in 6 to 8 to 10 months, then you're making a higher percentage on that realistically, right? Because 15% is stretched out over 12 months. If you're cutting that in half, then right now you're into the 25, 30% range. So when looking at projects, we like 12 to 17% and 30 to 40,000 in profits as our target goal. And that's where you start putting the budget, ARV, it all starts meshing together. And again, highlights the importance of the contractor. They can make or break your deal, right? And then after you've toured through some of the properties, you've kind of honed in on your numbers, then it's a matter of kind of stripping it down and going, all right, apples to apples, if you're lucky, apples to apples, where's the better location, right? And you start whittling down some of the different factors that are positives versus negatives. And if it's just purely a profit margin percentage that you're looking at, then obviously that's probably the better deal to go after, unless it's in a much harder area to sell that property or a much longer time frame, typical days on market, that kind of factors that come into really looking at pulling the trigger. So for us, we love location specific properties, and we typically target specific rate different areas with the right profit margin mix. And what that means is that we typically, what's the old saying? You got to kiss a lot of frogs. We typically got to kiss, we got to rub, we got to shake down a lot of frogs to find some of those projects that meet our criteria for what we're looking for. And we have a very specific criteria, right? We want 3 to 4 bedrooms, typically 18 to 2,200 square feet. We want to capture it around 250 or under, with an ARV around 385 to 400, maybe even beyond that. That is our typical approach. And We would prefer not to have split entries. Split entries still turn, right? And a garage is more ideal. It's just one of the factors that really stick out in our market specifically for what people are looking for. So yeah, once you go through all the numbers and you've evaluated the property, you feel pretty good, then you figure out which one you want to go ahead and write up, which we'll dive into here next. So I really appreciate your time being here. Again, I know you can be anywhere else. There's a lot of attention grabbers out there, so the fact that you're here with me right now says a lot. So thank you very much. And again, you can purchase this map with all the information by just going to the link and downloading it, and bada bing, you're taking your steps to 30 days to real estate acquisition and the start of potentially your new life or your next chapter in the real estate world. So thanks again. We'll see you on the next video.